January 2023, in a quiet suburban town in America. A family appears perfect, with a hard-working husband and a devoted wife. But when the wife notices strange behavior and secretive actions, she uncovers a shocking truth: her husband has a second family in another state. This discovery leads to a tragic and unexpected end. Sarah is a caring wife and mother in her early 40s. She takes care of the home and is active in her community, always supporting her family. She has been married to John for 15 years and believes their marriage is strong. Sarah trusts John completely and is devoted to making their family life happy. As a mother, she is especially close to her 14-year-old daughter, Emily. However, Sarah starts to feel something isn't right in her marriage as she notices John's odd behavior, which deeply upsets her as she struggles to understand why he's changing. John is in his mid-40s, a charming and successful man who works as a sales manager. He is respected for his career and is seen as a loving father and husband. John has built a life where he's able to travel for work and provide well for his family. However, he is hiding a big secret. He has another family in a different state. John has been living a double life with his second wife and son, keeping this hidden from Sarah. Despite loving his family, his lies and fears of being caught drive him to make dangerous choices. Emily is Sarah and John's 14-year-old daughter. She is very close to her mother and believes that her family life is stable and happy. She has no idea about the problems between her parents and trusts that everything is normal at home. Lily is John's second wife, in her late 30s, living in a neighboring state with their young son, Mason. She believes that John is a widower with an estranged daughter, not knowing that he has been hiding his first family from her. Lily trusts John completely, unaware that the life she has built with him is based on lies. Mason is John and Lily's young son, completely unaware of his father's other life. He believes his father is a hero and enjoys the family time he has with him. Mason's innocence highlights how John's choices affect not only his wives, but also his children, who see him as a devoted father. March 2023. Sarah's growing doubts reach a boiling point when she discovers an unfamiliar woman's bracelet hidden in John's luggage. Though she initially tries to dismiss it as a simple mistake, the discovery gnaws at her. A few days later, while going through his things, she comes across receipts from family outings, dinners, and hotel stays, all from another state. Her heart races as she pieces the evidence together. John's frequent business trips, once seen as normal, now seem suspicious. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah decides to secretly follow John on his next business trip. She quietly prepares, gathering her courage, and drives for hours, heading toward his supposed destination. Sarah finally arrives in a small suburban town, far from their home. Her stomach churns as she follows the address she found in John's receipts. She stops in front of a modest house, her breath catching in her throat. As Sarah quietly watches from her car, John steps out of the front door, laughing and holding hands with a woman, Lily. Sarah watches in stunned silence as Lily greets John with a warm embrace, calling him her husband. The truth hits Sarah like a tidal wave. Her husband, John, has been leading a double life, and she is not part of it. The life she thought was secure and full of love has been shattered, and the reality of John's betrayal sinks in. April 2023, the day Sarah confronts John, is one that will change everything. Her heart is heavy with betrayal, and the anger that had been building up inside her explodes as soon as she steps into their home. The weight of what she's discovered about her husband's double life crushes her, and she can't contain the pain and fury she feels. She looks John straight in the eye and tells him that she knows everything about Lily, about their son, about the life he's been leading without her. John's face pales as the truth catches up with him, and he tries to maintain his composure. He stammers, attempting to offer some sort of explanation. He says that he never wanted to hurt her, that he was always torn between the two families, and that he never intended for things to get out of hand. He admits that his affair with Lily began before he and Sarah were married. When Lily found out she was pregnant, John felt obligated to take responsibility and promised her he would take care of her and their child. His voice cracks as he explains that he thought he could manage both relationships without anyone ever finding out. Sarah listens in stunned silence, feeling as though the floor has been ripped out from under her. Every word he speaks feels like a betrayal, and yet she can hear the guilt in his voice, the desperation as he tries to explain how everything got out of control. But to Sarah, the damage is already done. She had trusted him completely, and now that trust has been shattered beyond repair. The conversation quickly shifts from a calm explanation to a heated argument. Sarah's initial shock begins to transform into pure rage as she realizes just how deep John's lies run. She demands to know how long he's been hiding this other family, how long he's been living this deceitful life behind her back. The more he tries to explain himself, the more Sarah sees his words as empty excuses. She realizes just how long he's been manipulating her, controlling what she knew, and keeping secrets from her. Her mind races, thinking back to all the times she had supported him, trusted him, and believed his explanations for his behavior, his late-night phone calls, his frequent trips, his secretive nature. It all makes sense now, but that doesn't lessen the betrayal she feels. Her emotions are a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and pain as she threatens him, promising that she will expose him to both families. She tells him she will no longer live a lie and will leave him if necessary. The thought of facing both families, his and hers, with the truth of his infidelity and double life, sends a chill through John. He panics, realizing that his entire carefully crafted world could come crashing down in an instant. His desperate pleas begin, and he begs her not to go public with his secret, telling her that everything will work out if she just gives him more time. His voice is tinged with fear, and for the first time, Sarah sees the desperation in his eyes. He promises her that he will fix things, that he will end his relationship with Lily, and that they can move forward, but his words sound hollow. Sarah knows she can never go back to the woman who trusted him implicitly, and the thought of staying with someone who has deceived her for so long fills her with disgust. John, now cornered, tries to justify his actions, claiming that he never meant for it to get this far. He insists that he was just trying to do right by both families, but Sarah is no longer buying it. She tells him that it's over, and she is done with his lies. As she walks away from him, the tension in the room thickens. John's frantic attempts to salvage the situation only push Sarah further away, and she begins to understand the true extent of the betrayal. This argument marks the beginning of the end of their marriage. Sarah knows that she can't continue to live in this web of lies and deceit, and now it's only a matter of time before everything unravels. May 2023, as the truth of John's double life becomes undeniable to Sarah, her world shatters. After confronting him with evidence of his betrayal, she threatens to expose him to both families and leave him for good. This moment becomes the breaking point for John, who has spent years managing the two families in secret, all while maintaining the facade of a loving husband and father. His fear of losing everything, his reputation, his family, and the life he had built, drives him to a place of panic. In a frantic attempt to protect his lies, John's emotions spiral out of control. He becomes enraged and feels cornered as Sarah continues to press him for answers. What started as a heated argument escalates when John, unable to cope with the weight of his lies, resorts to violence. His anger overwhelms him, and in a fit of rage, he strikes Sarah, first physically pushing her, then attacking her with lethal force. Overcome with fear and desperation, John commits the ultimate betrayal. He kills Sarah in a sudden, impulsive act of violence, hoping that her death will end his spiral into ruin and silence the painful truth of his secret life. It's a tragic and irreversible decision, one that will haunt him forever, but at the moment, he sees no other way out. After the shocking murder of Sarah, John tries to cover his tracks. In a panic-stricken state, he stages the scene to make it appear as if Sarah's death was an unfortunate accident. He moves her body, arranges the scene, and tries to manipulate the evidence to suggest that it was an unintended tragedy. He tells the authorities that Sarah must have fallen while doing household chores, hoping that the lack of immediate evidence would buy him time to cover up the crime. However, despite his attempts to control the narrative, cracks in his story begin to emerge. As the investigation unfolds, the authorities grow suspicious. The scene of the accident doesn't add up with the explanations John provides. Furthermore, Emily, traumatized by her mother's sudden and violent death, begins to recall the escalating tension she had witnessed in the days leading up to the tragedy. She remembers overhearing heated arguments between her parents, something that stood out as odd to her. Her detailed recollection of events becomes crucial in raising red flags with the detectives. Emily's account of how her mother and father had been distant and fighting before the incident begins to paint a different picture than the one John had told the authorities. With no clear-cut explanation, the authorities dig deeper into John's background. They start questioning him more intensely, searching for inconsistencies in his alibi. Meanwhile, Emily's pain and confusion make her a reluctant but vital witness, giving the police the insight they need to suspect foul play. As John tries to maintain his composure, his increasingly frantic and defensive behavior only heightens the investigators' doubts, and soon, his carefully constructed lies begin to unravel, bringing the tragic reality of his actions closer to the surface. June 2023, after Sarah's death is ruled suspicious, the police investigation begins in earnest. Initially, John's version of events, the tragic accident, seems plausible to most people. However, as detectives dig deeper into the circumstances of Sarah's death, they start to notice several inconsistencies in John's account. He claimed that he was home when Sarah died, but the timeline doesn't line up with phone records and security footage from the neighborhood that places him elsewhere during crucial times. Further, the injuries found on Sarah's body don't match the idea of an accidental fall. Forensic evidence reveals that Sarah had defensive wounds, signs that she had tried to fight off her attacker. The position in which her body was found also suggests that it was staged to look like an accident. Detective Harris, the lead investigator, grows more suspicious of John's story, especially as John's alibi begins to falter under questioning. The investigation takes a significant turn when they begin to examine John's background more thoroughly. They subpoena his phone records and bank statements, uncovering a trail of suspicious transactions. Hotel stays, expensive dinners, and travel expenses, many of which were not part of John's official work itinerary, lead the detectives to an unsettling discovery. John had been visiting another state regularly, where he had a second family. The investigators also interviewed John's coworkers, who confirmed that John's frequent business trips were actually cover-ups for his meetings with another woman, Lily Turner, who lives in a nearby state. As the detectives connect the dots, they uncover more and more about John's double life. He had been living as a devoted husband and father to Sarah, while secretly maintaining a parallel family with Lily. The shock of this revelation shakes the investigators. It becomes clear that Sarah's death was not an accident. It was the result of John's desperate attempt to keep his secret from being exposed. The police also find that John had been growing increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to Sarah's death. A number of texts and calls to Lily during that time show his anxiety, fearing that Sarah was getting too close to uncovering the truth. John had even made several attempts to downplay his absences by blaming work and trips, but Sarah's growing suspicions made him nervous. The detectives now have the pieces to build a case against John, showing that his motive to kill Sarah stemmed from his fear of losing both families and the shame of being exposed. As the investigation intensifies, Lily is contacted by the authorities. Up until this point, she had believed John's lies that he was a widower with a tragic past and an estranged daughter. She had been led to believe that he was completely devoted to her and their young son, Mason. However, when the detectives approach her and explain John's deception, the revelation hits Lily with an emotional force she never anticipated. She learns that John had been married to Sarah for over 15 years, and that their daughter, Emily, was far from the estranged child he had told her about. John had been keeping her completely in the dark, and now she feels utterly betrayed. The shock of discovering that John was living a double life and was actively lying to her about his entire family is overwhelming. She feels humiliated, angry, and heartbroken that the man she trusted and loved had been deceiving her for years. Lily's emotions spiral as she processes this painful new reality. She had envisioned a future with John, believing in the life he had promised her. But now, all of it feels like a lie. She starts to question every moment of their relationship, wondering how much of it had been real. The fact that John was keeping this second family a secret, even while raising a child with her, devastates Lily. The betrayal cuts deep, and she begins to grapple with her own feelings of guilt, wondering how she had been so blind to his deceit. In many ways, she feels as though she has been an unwitting accomplice in his lies, especially when it becomes clear that John had never intended to tell her the truth. On the other side, the effects of John's double life are just as devastating for Sarah's family. Emily, devastated by her mother's sudden death, is now faced with the horrifying truth that her father had been leading a secret life. The shock is compounded by the fact that John's betrayal extends far beyond just Sarah. His deception also affects Emily, who must now come to terms with the fact that her father has another family and had kept it hidden from her. As the investigation progresses, Emily's emotional turmoil grows, and she struggles to process her feelings of betrayal and confusion. For Sarah's extended family and friends, the revelation that John had been lying for years shatters their trust in him. Many of them are left questioning how they could have been so fooled by his charm and smooth demeanor. John, who'd been seen as a devoted husband and father, is now revealed to be a man who had carefully orchestrated a web of lies, deceiving not only his wife but his second family as well. The realization that John's actions have caused so much pain to so many people becomes a source of immense regret and disbelief for both families involved. As the investigation continues, the shockwaves of John's deceit reverberate through both families, leaving them grappling with the aftermath of his betrayal. His carefully crafted life is slowly unraveled, and the full extent of his lies is revealed. For both Lily and Sarah's family, the emotional toll is overwhelming as they are forced to confront the truth about the man they loved and trusted. The unraveling of John's double life brings not only legal consequences, but emotional devastation to all those involved. After John is arrested for Sarah's murder, the legal proceedings unfold quickly. The case draws significant media attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the emotional devastation it has caused to both families. In the days following his arrest, John initially tries to maintain his innocence, but his frantic behavior during questioning only strengthens the prosecution's case. He is unable to provide a consistent explanation for the inconsistencies in his alibi and the evidence found at the crime scene. His nervousness and erratic responses further undermine his credibility. The prosecution builds a solid case based on the mounting evidence of John's double life. The hotel receipts, phone records, and witness testimonies from those who knew both Sarah and Lily paint a clear picture of a man who was living a carefully crafted deception. Forensic evidence, including the signs of a struggle and the defensive wounds on Sarah, also suggest that her death was not a random accident, but a deliberate act. The defense team attempts to argue that the evidence is circumstantial, but the overwhelming nature of the facts, combined with John's poor behavior during questioning, leaves little room for doubt. During the trial, John's emotional detachment from the crime becomes a focal point. He offers no real defense, and instead, his demeanor conveys a sense of resignation. His constant shifting of blame and the coldness with which he addresses the situation only serve to strengthen the prosecution's argument that his motives were rooted in fear of exposure and loss, rather than a spontaneous outburst of violence. As the trial progresses, John is found guilty of first-degree murder for the killing of his wife, Sarah Morgan. The jury deliberates for just a few hours before returning a unanimous verdict. His sentencing hearing takes place shortly after the verdict, and John is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge takes into account not only the brutality of the crime, but also the extent of the emotional and psychological harm caused to both families. John's actions, which destroyed the lives of the two women he claimed to love, are deemed to be particularly egregious, and the court hands down a harsh sentence in response. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensifies as news outlets focus on the tragic betrayal at the heart of the crime. The public is captivated by the story of John's double life, the emotional toll on his family, and the horrific way in which Sarah's life was taken. The case becomes a symbol of the destructive power of secrets and the far-reaching consequences of deceit within a family. In the aftermath of the trial and John's sentencing, the emotional fallout for both families is profound. Emily, still reeling from the death of her mother and the revelation of her father's betrayal, is left in a state of shock. The teenager struggles with overwhelming feelings of anger, sadness, and confusion. The betrayal by her father has shattered her trust in the person she once looked up to as a protector. Now, Emily must navigate life without her mother, while grappling with the painful realization that her father was capable of such deceit.